You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Charlene Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Devon C. Ford.
Flesh, Blood, Steel, the new book from David Allen Jones. 16-year-old Jake Harris wakes up after a horrific car accident to find 13 years have come and gone. He is 29 years old, a cyborg, and one of the world's most feared assassins. Horrified by the things he's done, things he can't remember, Jake vows never to kill again. Unfortunately, the company that owns Jake has other plans. They're not about to lose their top hitman to the errant memories of his teenage self. When Jake manages to escape them, they launch a worldwide manhunt that ranges from a near-future New York City to Paris. Desperate to remain himself, Jake joins a rebel faction dedicated to wresting control of the world's governments from the hands of militarized corporations. Using his enhanced body and perceptions, he is able to aid them in their fight. But Jake doesn't realize the rebels have their own plans for him, ones that involve unleashing his unique talents on their enemies. Faced with a dark past he can't recall and uncertain whom he should trust, Jake must come to terms with the sinister choices that molded him into the man he became. The question is, can he avoid doing it all again? Assassins aren't born, they're programmed. Flesh, Blood, Steel by David Allen Jones. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have one of my favorite science fiction authors on the show. Devon C. Ford is here to talk all things speculative fiction, science fiction. You probably know him from his Recon series, Book 1, Recon, which he had a great promotion on the last few weeks, and lots of other stuff going on. Welcome to the show, Devon.
Hi, Hank. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thanks for coming on. Devon, before we get into all the goodness that we'll talk about, we begin each show with the same question. And that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
I don't know. Storyteller is different to being a writer. I didn't even get into reading until I was an adult. Fought very hard against anything academic like that. I think I was 18 when I picked up a book for fun out of sheer boredom on a really, really boring holiday. And so that's almost 20 years ago, and I've always been reading or listening to something at any time. First, I really don't know. I only came into writing very late in life, like mid-30s, and that was. I don't know if you've ever had this before with any other writers. It was just an obsessive idea, which became notes in my head, which I had to get written down. And that ended up being taking a life of its own. It became a story, and then it ended up, by the time I'd even realised that I've written 30,000 words of a book and thought I may as well carry on. So I'd never even considered being a writer until I'd halfway written the first book. And it's probably the most accidental start of a career I can imagine.
Well, I have heard a story like that before, and one reason I love that question to start the show off with is everybody has a completely different story of coming to writing or coming to storytelling. And you know, everybody's entry point is completely different. And yours is not exceptional in that you came to it late. A lot of us, I didn't write my first novel until I was 40. I'd done other writing throughout the years, but there's just something about, there comes a time when the switch turns on, and then once it's turned on, you can never turn it off again, apparently.
Oh, no, I don't think you can. It's like tattoos for me. There's always, in the back of my mind, I'm always planning the next one.
Yeah. So were you like a big fan of movies, and what what stoked your love of science fiction?
I've always been a bit of a secret geek at heart, really. I've always been a bit of a nerd. I've always been into my sci-fi. There's no Star Wars, Star Trek divide for me. It's sci-fi. It's on TV. I'll watch it. And so there's always been that love of the unknown, and the fact that I like rule. I like getting my head into a world that doesn't necessarily follow the rules that we have to. It's an escapism, and bizarrely, going from reading and watching being my escapism, writing's becoming more of an escapism as well.
Right. Was there a particular story that you loved that opened up your imagination? Like when you did begin writing, did you feel like you were channeling anything from earlier, like, oh, this has a Star Trek vibe or a Star Wars, or did you find yourself pulling on anything that you had loved before?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my main work is post-apocalyptic, so we're talking immediate future, hard science fiction. I've dabbled off into 80s military zombie, futuristic dystopian, all very like Fahrenheit 451 kind of stuff, and then into just a full-blown, for fun, military sci-fi. But my real basis is in post-apocalyptic science fiction. What really got into my head, there was a BBC TV series that got axed after the first series, which still angers me to this day, and it's a few years ago now. It was called BBC Survivors, and it's I'll be honest, it's a very similar kind of setting to my first 6-book series, where there is this kind of flu pandemic that wipes out the majority of the population apart from these few survivors. Now, what intrigued me about that wasn't that it's about what they do as much. It's about the secrets behind the people who are left and how they work together. Because I'm a massive people watcher. In any situation, I can't help but watch the people. So if you put 10 strangers in a room for an experiment, same as if you had 10 survivors out of a town who don't know each other, they will form this natural, almost animal-like hierarchy between themselves, and coming up with how that plays out yourself is endless. You have so much possibility with writing. You're only limited by your imagination.
Well, I love that you bring that up, because, the old advice that everyone gives is if you want to be a writer, you need to do two things. You need to read a lot and you need to write a lot. And
drink a lot. Yeah.
And drink a lot. That's definitely a 2A. But I think there's a third thing that nobody wants to talk about, and that's that you need to be around people. You need to hear people talk. You need to watch their mannerisms. You need to take in what makes us all different, and that's where writing great characters comes from observing people, and I think that's an important part that gets left out a lot.
Absolutely. I don't know who said it. It was said a long time ago to me, and it said if you never leave the house from today, you can only write what you already know. And no amount of Google or watching television is ever going to give you enough good raw material to start a new series. It's common knowledge now with my fans. I'm an ex-police officer. I left the police when my writing started to become a viable option, and that's given me a very big insight into, let's just say, a side of life that most people don't see. But it's given me that insight into the characters who aren't heroes all the time, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And I went out today, and I worked from our local library, and I sat there with my headphones on, sat in a position where I'm at the back of the room, watching the whole room, watching the stairs come and go in, and watching people come and go in. And it's the most random times when you see a complete stranger do something or hear them say something, and that will become a focal point in a book. Now, no one will ever know that's not just my straight-up imagination. It's my interpretation of something I've seen. If I'd stayed in the house, I'd never have that moment.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I love to go out to places, and it's difficult for me to work at places like a coffee shop or something because I wind up watching people and not writing. But you do collect those little moments and things. I love hearing that other people do that too.
The problem I have with watching people in public is I do get distracted, but I also start narrating it in Attenborough's voice in my head, and then I lose all focus whatsoever, and I've got to come away from it.
Do you ever just like open up a new document and just start narrating what you see, and then like, oh well, I'm going to use this somewhere, but now I've got it captured?
I've done that so many times. I've had to put a folder on my desktop that is entitled, no word of a lie, random shit.
Oh, I love it.
Because I've just there's just 2-3 paragraphs of all sorts of stuff. I don't know where it fits. I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if I'm ever going to use it, but I might open it one day and go, you know what, that works.
Well, I have a similar folder it's not labeled random shit, but I might rename it now that that's because that's fantastic. But yeah, I'll have little ideas, and sometimes it's just maybe it's an opening sentence, maybe it's a piece of dialogue or something, and I have gone back on occasion and just read through some of those, and one of them became my book writer's block. That was it was a what if sentence, and I had it for months and months and months. And then one day I went back and reread it, and it meant something to me. And, so yeah, I write down stuff for sure.
That's brilliant. I mean, I'd probably go back through my random shit now, look at half a dozen and go, that's not even English. What am I thinking? Like, great idea for a story. There's a world on the back of a massive turtle. Oh, that's been done.
Oh, Mr.
Damn it,
Pratchett. Yeah. Mr. Pratchett. Your time as a police officer, how do you feel like that has informed your writing? Other than just the watching kind of the best and worst of us all.
See, I think the best and the worst probably deserves a little more of an explanation. It's very easy doing that job, and anyone doing a similar job. I mean, before the police, I was in the prison service working in jails. So it's very easy doing that kind of job. And I've got writer friends who are or have been police officers over in the States, and it's very, very easy to get bogged down with the darker side of life. But on a very small reflection, you see the dark side of life, but you also see the absolute best of humanity in such stark contrast to the terrible things you've seen and witnessed. But that is that reciprocity of life, that kind of, not to sound like it's Lion King, but that whole circle of life is the best approximation of how human nature works. There is good, there is bad, and you have to have both. You have to have balance. A hero has to have a villain to test them. Right. A happy ending has to have adversity to get to that end. There's got to be some kind of mirroring of your good and your bad in any story whatsoever, be that TV, film, a written book. So, I mean, I feel like I've got a head start on a lot of things, especially post-apocalyptic, because let's be honest, anyone who's read a modern day post-apoc story has played post-apocalyptic bingo, and you can do it just on one hand. You've got vulnerable female being threatened by people. You've got bad people on motorbikes. There's a machete. There's always one character who never misses a shot. You can just pick it out of anything because they're not overused tropes. They are what would actually happen in a post-apocalyptic scenario, because we all know human nature, whether we admit it or not. We all know what would happen. So they're not overused tropes, but you will see those elements of humanity coming out in stories. If anything, people don't complain when they are there. They feel lost with the story when they're not.
Speaking of those, some folks here in the States in law enforcement. I think we share mutual friends with Josh Hayes and Scott Moon, and those two guys have seen some dark stuff. They you can just tell, and they kind of shifty-eyed a little bit. That they've probably been to the dark side.
You see enough, it makes you suspicious, and as I'm good friends with both. I'm part of the Keystroke Medium movement, and yes, you've been to the dark side, come back. And I say I speak to both almost every day. And Scott's the first one, and he says, I'm not betraying any confidence here. He's very open about things. I went to him when I was having a bad day, and he said, "Brother, I ride that train hard myself," and it is great. There's obviously that, we're thousands of miles away doing completely different jobs in completely different worlds, but just the whole being able to understand.
Right.
I'm sure it's a worldwide forces ethic, the same, no matter where you'd serve in the armed forces all around the world. There's that element of understanding that you would have with what one another does.
Right.
So yeah, I do know what you mean about that look in their eye, but they've been to the dark side and come back.
That's a great Scottism, riding that train hard. I love that. Your love of post-apocalyptic, where do you think that comes from?
Probably just a desperate need for it to actually happen in some form.
Do post-apocalyptic stories let us see the worst of people and society and civilization, and let us play out these scenarios in our head without having to actually live it?
Honestly, I don't think they do show you the worst, because I could write what I think is the worst that humans could do to one another, and if I bought the book, I'd close it and refund it. So I think in a way you've got to sanitize it, because what one human can do to another human, two perfectly reasonable people, over the last available food to feed their children, I don't think anyone could do it justice to how brutal real life is in comparison to fiction.
Well, I'll tell you what, back in 2005, when Hurricane Katrina hit the southern part of the United States, we live 2 hours north of the Gulf Coast. So when Katrina came on land, we got the brunt of it. It went right through the town that I live in, and it was still a Category 3 storm. 100 mile an hour winds by the time it hit us. And in one of the towns just south of us, a brother and sister got into a fight at a convenience store over a bag of ice, and she shot him over the bag of ice. And these were family, these were relatives. and this is after being out of electricity for 2 days. And you learn really quickly the horrible things that people can do to one another.
I think I'm more amazed at the fact that it's, by the time they finished the argument, the whole bloody thing would be melted anyway.
Exactly.
You see, I've only I can only just about imagine what you're saying. My wife and I were on honeymoon in the Caribbean. We were in St. Lucia, and we ended up getting an extra day in a 5-star resort, which was fantastic. Unfortunately, the last 2.5 days were spent hunkering down inside with a couple of friends we made there, taking it in turns to go and get trays full of alcohol just to see the day through, because we'd managed to catch the tail of 3 different storms coming through, which all struck land at hurricane force, and it was horrendous. We've gone one day from crystal clear water, you can see half a mile out, with nice rolling waves, just amazing, perfect sound. And literally within 6 hours, we've got all sorts of shit blowing up on the beach. There's glass smashing. There's about 4 staff turned up, and yeah, it went post-apocalyptic within half a day.
Good grief! It's really, we take the relative peace and comfort that we live in for granted. That when there's a major weather event like that, I mean, things can change in a matter of hours, and civilization can completely break down.
So people say you're only 3 months away from being homeless, from losing your job or anything. You're only 3 days away from killing each other over clean water if the services fail. People don't realise that. They don't, especially. I don't want to sound old or like I'm lecturing my teenager again, but people of this generation really don't know they're born yet. I mean, I grew up in a farm in the middle of nowhere in the 80s, where we had power failures all the time. We didn't even have 5 TV channels. We only had 4, and one of those was intermittent. So yeah, I'm sounding very old now, so I'll just carry on. We had
that was my experience as well. Yeah.
And now, I've got I've got a 9-year-old daughter who I'm having to work on a handwriting with, but she can work my iPhone with both thumbs. It's a change in how in how human nature's developed through technology. So I worry for this generation. If there's an event after people of my age are still capable to do things like build shelter, find clean water, if that's left all to the next generation, they will all just die out as they're trying to get signal on their phones.
Right. So what was that first story idea for the book that you wrote that would be your first book that you put out?
That was on the basis of that BBC Survivors TV program. So take the scenario. I developed obviously onto the story and no spoilers. So the scenario is that 99.9% of life worldwide is wiped out. You see, you're that 0.1%, which in a town of the size I lived in then was 100 people. So there's 100 people scattered over 50 square miles. That's the worst game of hide and seek ever. You will never find one person in 5 square miles unless they're out shouting in the street looking for you. And it starts following the main character, and it's obvious from the very beginning that main character is pretty tortured, and it transpires that he's actually one of the only people who feels like the apocalypse has fixed him, because for him life was so shit before that it's actually a bit of a blessing in some ways, that when he's needed and he finds himself reluctantly bringing these people together, ending up the de facto leader in some sense, because there was no one else to do it. So he stepped up and he did it. Now that moves on very, very quickly, really, that when they get more people, it's the concept of the fighting troop on the front line. For that fighting troop on the front line to be there's 10 people doing their jobs to the best of their ability to keep that soldier fed, equipped, medically fit, able to be extracted if need be. So they got all the support staff. So this main character, Dan, becomes the ranger, the one who has the guns, goes out, gets the food, keeps them safe. But if he's doing that all day, who is keeping the fires going? Who is making sure the place they live is sanitary? So they end up departmentalizing life, and they end up with this kind of council of elders with people in charge of different departments, which is exactly what I think would have to happen with a cooperative society of people surviving in the post-apocalypse, because you've got to have effective management if you're living with more than a couple of people. You can't just run around eating out of a can and chucking it away. You're not going to survive long term doing that. And the idea of that was always long-term thriving, which, again, no spoilers, didn't turn out to be the case, and there's quite a few twists and turns along the way. But yeah, it's how one person surviving on their own finds other people, reluctantly becomes their leader, and ends up joining in with everyone else to make sure that everyone's got what they need.
And that's the After It Happened series, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah.
You wrote the book. You had by your own words, you came to writing and reading late. You didn't really become a big reader until you were grown, and then you got bitten by the bug and wanted to tell the story. For someone right out of the gate, you saw pretty big success with this book and the follow-on books. What was that journey like for you, to go from this is something I'm just going to try, to then know that people all over the world were reading these stories and it was connecting with them, and that you were developing a following?
It was, no irony or anything. It was life-changing. It was completely life-changing. Sure. If I do wish I'd known then what I know now, I would have marketed and done things very differently. Yeah.
Well, you
happened
don't know what
initially-
you don't know at that point.
Oh no, and I still know nothing, which shows you how little I knew back then. And this is 3 years ago next month. So it's been a long time, and I've learned so much, and it's the whole case of it's what people call consciousness. And, what you know you don't, what you know, and what you know you don't know, and what you don't know you know. I know what I don't know now. Back then, I didn't know anything at all, so I had no idea of the scope of my ignorance. And if I could come up with a recipe to recreate that initial success, I would have done it by now. So yeah, it was astronomical. It was unexpected. It's been brilliant. And I've learned a massive amount from it. One of the biggest lessons I took away is that I've written the first 3. I published the first 3 in one go, with the first book out for free for 5 days, put it there, let it soak, turn around, and there's 50 copies gone. I'm like, wow, it's 50 copies. Then there was 500 copies. Then there was 12,000 copies. Then there was 4.5 million pages read in a month. And I'm thinking, it's only then I began to actually think that I've actually done something right. Jumped straight on writing the 4th book. Couple of thousand pre-sales on that straight away. And then I thought, great, I'll take 3 months off. Instead of writing the 5th and 6th book straight away, which is what I did the year after, I just thought, you know what, I've been under the thumb for so long, working long 24/7 shifts, doing a 65-mile commute to and from work in hellish traffic. I just need a break. And I took a break, but unfortunately I took too long a break, and then thought, oh shit, people are starting to forget about these books. And then I had to jump back on it and write the last 2 in the series. But with that one, I actually initially planned it as a trilogy, because I thought by the end of book 3, you know what, these people have had enough, leave them alone. And then I thought, well, no, because these people's suffering is actually paying my rent. So you know what, right. They can have a bit more. Right. And then in the end, I got to book 6. I thought, I can't do it to him. I cannot do it to him anymore. That's it. I'm ending the series there. They've had enough. And I've written. I mean, this might sound weird. I've written the epilogue of the last book, the 6th book of my first series, and it still brings me close to tears. Either in Audible or in writing, it really connects with me for what it means. And then 8 months later, I did a spin-off series because I thought, you know what, I think they've had enough of a break. I think they can take some more punishment.
It's amazing what characters can take when it comes to paying rent.
Oh yes, yes.
We had a little fun with R.C. Bray on Facebook earlier today. And you then, after all of that success, your books were turned into audiobooks narrated by R.C. Bray. That is like a life goal of mine. And I know you're a fan of audiobooks as well. What was it like having Mark Watney's voice come on and read your book?
I think I need to probably admit some more ignorance here as well. The first audiobook I listened to ever was The Martian, after the publisher sent it to me for free for signing. And I listened to it and I thought, wow, this is amazing. You're obviously aware of Michael Stephen Fuchs, the author of the Arisen series. Yeah. I chat with Michael when he's not either running or got his head down writing. I chat with Michael. He's a great guy. If I ever actually find 2 minutes to get to London and meet him, I will. But I reached out to him because it was just, books I liked, and he's obviously got Bob reading the Arisen series. And at the time, he didn't know me very well, and he put it to me that I was trying to turn down R.C. Bray. Let me say that again for effect. I tried to turn down R.C. Bray. Because I didn't know enough about the industry at the time, and I spoke to Michael, and he put it as politely as he could for someone he didn't know. He says, "If you turn down Bob Bray, you're a fucking idiot." I thought, okay, this guy's written a lot of books. I like his books. I'll trust him, and it was huge. Now, I know you spoke to Rhett recently as well.
Yeah.
Bob has this mad influence over the Audible market. I don't know if basically he should start a cult and just get everyone to put 20% of their wages into his bank account every month, and I'm absolutely certain a good percentage of people will do it. But yeah, he's got this insane sway over the Audible market.
He does.
Because he is an absolute top flight voice actor. He can bring books to life in a way that people can't see them any other way. If any of the your big R.C. Bray narrated stories get made into film, and let's be honest, let's talk Columbus Day. If that ends up as a film, and Bob is not the voice of Skippy, there will be uproar.
Oh yeah.
People will be in the streets picketing. They'll be there in their twos and threes shouting, and everyone will be looking at going, "Who are you and what are you on about?" But yeah, having Bob do the audibles, to me it wasn't something I'd considered. So I can imagine other writers sitting there listening to this going, you are such an idiot. And I fully admit that. I have been, and probably still am, and still will be in the future, a complete idiot, because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Well, I told Bob that Matt Damon could go suck eggs, that Mark Watney would always be Bob Bray to me.
Yeah. You see, I cannot be the only person to have watched the film, finished it with a meh, but when he first appeared on screen, gone, Matt Damon.
Yeah. I love it.
Anyone who doesn't get that, then you're not my friend anymore.
Exactly. We're just going to let that sit there and let people stew on that for a minute. Speaking,
so having Bob was life changing. I've moved on with other series, one in production, one is the first one's out. You see, after It Happened series, there is a spin-off series, and again, I'll say that again for effect. It is a spin-off series. It is not a continuation of the first series.
Gotcha.
That is written first-person point of view from a female character. So when I've had, I'll call it what it is, when I've had abuse, lots of abuse, for it should be R.C. Bray. Well, yes, Bob's great. He's done an absolutely amazing job with the series, but this is a different series.
Right.
And as talented as he is, I'm pretty sure he can't make himself a 19-year-old girl. I mean, I'm sure he'd have fun dressing up as one. That's entirely up to him. But no, it is a different series. And I've got Kate Redding reading that. And
she's fantastic.
She's Audible royalty. It is. Yeah. There is no other way of saying it. And she's done an amazing job with that. But it is a different series, and it's got to be taken as that.
Right.
My sci-fi, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun on your questions.
No, go ahead.
Sci-fi, that's going to be coming out of the mouth of Luke Daniels as things stand at the moment. So that's, again, big fan of the Ember Wars saga.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic books that are deeply immersive, and it's one of those, quite similar to Arisen. I'm halfway through the third book, and someone says, "Oh, what's that about?" And 25 minutes later, when they're looking at their watch, trying to get away, and I've got a flip chart out, and I'm making sure that they understand the links between different people. And then you go off onto the spin-off series and the standalones, and they literally go, "Oh, just leave me alone." So yeah, I love those series, and I couldn't hear those any other way. Some of the characters, same as Bob does, just make me laugh out loud with the things they say and how they say them.
Well, Luke Daniels is Audible royalty as well, and I've had the good fortune of having Bob and Luke on the show before and talking all about audiobooks, and they're hilarious guys, and you could tell that they really love what they do. And as someone who loves audiobooks, it's so cool to see that they that they love what they do as much as as we do as writers. That's an important thing to them. The translation of the book and the acting is so important to them.
Yeah, but it's a completely different world. Bob said this before. It's he couldn't write the story, and I couldn't act out the story like he does. These are very different skills using the same material. or creating the same material based around the same material. And I'm I'd say 70% Audible, 30% Kindle, purely because with a teenager, 2 younger kids, a baby and a baby on the way, like I get time to sit down and read.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've always got an Audible on the go as my link into keeping up with stories.
Well, I'll tell you, if it weren't for Audible, I wouldn't be able to do the amount of show prep that I do for this show. I just don't have enough time to, if we're doing 5 shows a week, I have to listen to audiobooks. And, while I'm driving kids here or there or, running errands, I can always have a book in my ear. And it's been a life changer for me. And like you said, I know that, it sounds like hyperbole and cliche, but, there are certain things that just, it alters the course of your life.
Absolutely. I mean, let me ask you a question. When was the last time you drove your car and just had music on?
When I'm with my wife or kids,
exactly. Yeah,
we'll have some. If I'm by myself, never, ever, ever.
I said, no, my kids have to jump in the story where they are. They get a quick 2-minute update and then they have to catch up. Right. What was it? I picked them up today and we were, I think, 3 hours into Joshua James's first Lucky Marines book.
Yeah.
Joshua's. I was sprinting with him this morning. Obviously, you're aware of the concept of the sprints we do. We do a 30-minute timed, and we were knocking out 1,000 words each in 30 minutes. I did that. I was working after my lunchtime coffee in the Costa downstairs. Then went back into the library to sit in my comfortable chair. He's got up early before work to knock out 1,000 words in half an hour. Between us, I think we put down about 12,000 words today, which is a massive word count. Yeah. But my kids are unless it's should we say inappropriate for children?
Sure.
Then my kids are always up on the audiobooks. It's great with my baby actually because there's a couple of narrators that put him straight to sleep. So yeah, that's been used more than once.
I love it. So let's talk about your writing habit. What is you're a full-time author now. I think after kind of when things took off around book 3 or 4.
It'll be 3 years in August I've been full-time.
Yeah, and you were able to make the jump. What does that mean for you on a daily basis? I think a lot of people have ideas of what it would be like if they're able to write full-time. But then when you're home and the restraints of the time clock are taken off and all of that, and you're kind of left to your own devices, how quickly do you realize that it might be a little different than you imagined?
I say that the start of the explanation of that is, let me tell you about my laundry basket. when I do my a few days washing, there generally isn't any what I call outdoor clothes in there. I think I've been spending 2.5 years kidding myself that the gym gear I'm wearing every day is ever going to see the gym. How can I put it? I look homeless on any given day.
I know the look. I'm currently wearing the look.
Yes, so as am I. I had to wear outdoor people clothes today for a while. I got back in and they came off. It's not as romantic and fun as I first thought it was, and it sounds to other people. I know it probably sounds a little bit selfish, a little bit spoiled to say that being a full-time stay-at-home author is difficult, especially when so many people so many great writers strive to get there. I attribute the fact I'm here to luck, which I'm trying to figure out, reverse engineer the recipe to. I hope to get there. You never know.
Well, write a book about it when you do.
Well, yeah, like the one that's on Amazon. How I Made $290,000 Self-Publishing. 1 copy, $290,000. Yeah. I have to create a structure. Otherwise, I annoy the hell out of my wife because I drop in here and there, and if there's no structure as to when I work 7 days a week, and as soon as she takes her eyes off me, I've got a laptop open again. Now, that's not constructive for getting solid work in, and it's not helpful for a home life. So there has to be a divide. I'm not lucky enough to live in in an area that has basements, because, or as we call them, cellars, as they're called. I would love to have. I could, go into the cupboard under the stairs, go downstairs, lock myself away in the dungeon, and write. I would love that, but we just don't have them. My office is part of one of the downstairs rooms, or I go to the soft office, as we call, which is staying in bed with a laptop. There has to be set times. Now, the routine is I get up with the baby, do the school run, and in between the school run, like I've done today, instead of coming back after the school run, I went and parked up in town, took a walk into town, so it feels like I'm commuting, which for someone who's been 2.5 years without a commute, it's amazing how much you miss that thing that ruined your life every day. So I took a short walk, went into town, went into the local library, sat down there, put my headphones on, cracked my knuckles, took a break halfway through, went downstairs to Costa, did another half an hour sprint. I jumped on with Scott and Joshua on a chat message, and did some sprints, which, a bit of healthy competition, a little bit of camaraderie, pushing people on to try and, get over that 1,000 words is just great. And, between friends that you chat with every day, it's good to know where we are as well, and seeing how their word counts are coming along. Now, I know word counts are a dirty word for some writers, but it's how I measure how I'm achieving my goals. So went back up to the library after my coffee, went and picked the kids up, came home, haven't done any work at home today, so my wife hasn't seen the laptop. She hasn't been looking at that lit up Apple and hearing me going not listening to her. I've put out over 6,000 words, sat in a public library for the cost of one cup of coffee, and that's great. I'm not going to be out of the house every day. I try and do that one day a week, but I'll take myself out of the way. And then work, so that work feels separate to home life. In the same way that her wife will go, if I'm just sat in front of her with a laptop, she'll go, "Oh, can you just have the baby for a minute while I go and do this?" And it's that constant interruption. But the plus side of that's probably going to make me sound really selfish for complaining about it. I'm not complaining about it. The plus side of this is that I see my baby for 8 hours a day more than I would do. Right. If I was still in my job, 12 hours a day more than if I was still in my last job.
Sure. And, there are trade-offs for sure. And
I think it boils down to discipline and having the discipline to get the words in. And as long as people aren't affected by how you put the words in, as long as people in your house aren't suffering, then however you do it, however it works for you.
Yeah. Is 6,000 words a day, is that an extraordinary day for you? Is that a typical day? What does an average day look like?
Well, Scott's actually got a spreadsheet for this. Averaging about 3,000 a day. I aim for 5 on a solid work day. My daily record is 18.
Wow.
Yeah, all-time record. I wrote a book in 9 days. I mean, it's only like 68,000 words, but that came out in 9 days. And I said the last day was 12 hours straight. I had to charge the laptop twice, but that was 18,000 words straight.
That's incredible.
It's incredible that I knew where the story was going enough to write that in one go, because I am the worst planner in the world. I could write a 2-paragraph plan, and by the second line, I've gone off on a tangent. I've had to scrap the plan. I cannot plan.
Well, that was going to be my next question: is how do you handle and when you, I've had conversations with Josh. We did a whole show on outlining, and with Richard Fox, who's an intense outliner. Where do you fall there? And when you're showing up every day and getting so many words in, how do you deal with the not planning aspect of still getting the words in?
It's basically to sit down, strap in, and see where it goes. Let me give you an example. I've got 4 books out of a 6-book series of an 80s military zombie apocalypse series written. The plan for that was It was actually written on a piece of paper that's on my desk for about a week. The plan for it was 80s, zombies, tanks. Now, I'm 4 books into that plan. So far, I'm sticking to the plan. That's as far as I dare. Yeah, that is as far as I dare. But no, I'm shocking at planning. Josh is the master of outlining. It's almost like he can see the matrix. He doesn't even see the symbols anymore. He just sees plot line and character and redhead. But if I could get Josh just to spare a day to just outline the 4 projects I'm working on at the moment, I would have them finished in a month.
Right. Well, and Josh, if you're listening, your outlining is a little obnoxious to listen to sometimes. So, but good on you. We love you, Josh. It's all,
but we love you,
fun.
Josh.
Yeah, but we love you, Josh. It's all in good fun. Devon, if people are just coming to your work and maybe they've engaged with what you're talking about and they think that your stories sound interesting, what would you have them begin with? If someone has never read any of your books, how would you introduce them to your work?
That's a difficult conversation because I have all the discipline of a hyperactive kitten. I've written in so many different genres in such a short time that it depends on what you're into. If you are straight up military sci-fi, then go for the expansion series. If you are all about the hard sci-fi post-apoc, then go for After It Happened. If you like zombies, then go for the Toy Soldiers series. I've written other stuff as well. I've written the first of a multi-author series, and this is an interesting one because it's publisher-led, and I've written the first book, which is basically, the brief was start World War III. Like, yeah, okay, let me ring my ex-wife. And that's gone on then with a second author's picked up the second story. Excuse me. And then a friend of mine's written the third one, which is an introduction I've made to the publisher. I've then written a post-apocalyptic, futuristic sci-fi cryo kind of Armageddon thing, where I'm now co-writing the second book in that series with the same author who's writing the third book in the multi-author series, which is Burning Skies, and the new one's New Earth. So that's all getting a little bit complicated. So what I'm trying to say is I've mangled so many genres into the blender that if you like post-apoc or you like zombies or you like sci-fi, just go with those for now. If you like my writing and the way I develop characters, then jump over a genre to something you might not ordinarily read and see where that takes you.
Toy Soldiers, just for a second, is such a fun series. The 80s zombies. What was why did you decide to set this series when you did?
Oh, I don't know. Have you got inside information here? Because you've just gone straight for the heart there with
yes.
Right. I grew up in the 80s on a farm in the middle of nowhere in Dorset, near to the tank base where all of this takes place. So in terms of boots on the ground, that's where I've grown up. Now, one of the main characters in that is a boy from an abusive home who finds himself very much on his own. Now, a lot of myself is in that character. So this is where a lot of people will read books by writers and they will not have a clue how much heart and soul of the actual writer is in that book. And people might not until now. But yeah, there's an awful lot of myself in there. A lot of the pain in the story of that character is, well, it's to say, if it doesn't come across as realistic, I've done something wrong.
Gotcha. And that's 4 books in that series, right?
So far, yes.
So far.
In terms of my current schedule, I've been that hyperactive kitten again. I've got 4 books on the go at once, which is interesting to keep up with, but I manage it. The next 2 series, the final 2 books in that series, are due this year, and they will be coming out, and there are current plans for that to go to Audible.
Nice. Devon, if people are just learning about you and want to find out more about you and your work, is there a place online, a website maybe, where they can go read all about you, connect with you, and dig into your back catalog?
Yeah, absolutely. DevonCFord.com. I do most of my interactions, I'd say, through my Facebook page, Devon C. Ford Official, and there is actually, in very Monty Python style, there is a splitter group with the Devon C. Ford fan page. Now, I didn't actually create that, which it still is weird to me to have fans. Which is strange, especially since I've got an actual physical book signing this coming Saturday in Birmingham City Centre. Not Birmingham, Alabama. Do not go to Birmingham, Alabama and complain that I'm not there. Birmingham, England. Brumleyland, yes. Yeah.
As in the home of Black Sabbath.
Yes, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, right where they filmed Ready Player One.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So yes, I've got a physical book signing. I've been to one before, which I wasn't too public about because there was only 6 people there and they didn't know I was. But I'm going on after a rather large UK celebrity with a few million Twitter followers, and then all these fans going to be there waiting to see the celebrity, and then I'm going to be there just on my own, like, hi. So yeah, I'm assured there's going to be at least 3 people turning up to actually see me and get a book signed, which I say that is a 300% increase on last time. So that's definitely a good thing. But yeah, it's still weird having fans. It's very humbling and a little bit frightening sometimes. Not the fans themselves, no, not the actual people. That came out wrong. It's frightening that what I've created has actually connected with so many people.
We're going to put links to all that in the show notes. Devon, I've had so much fun talking to you, buddy. I'm a big fan of what you do, and we're going to send everybody to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to come on the show.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Hedwig slipped into David's den, the circular reading room. A ladder of crude rungs protruded from the wall, remnant of its days as a grain silo. He pulled himself upward, rung by rung, until the bookcases and sofas were far below. Even if he fell and died, he didn't really care anymore. No, he did care. He couldn't die yet. She had to die first. That would make their divorce final, if she wanted it so much. Darkness enveloped him. He reached the top of the ladder and stepped off onto a catwalk of black mesh, lit only by the faint light of the 4 square windows that encircled the turret. From this perch he could see the exit she would use. He felt like an assassin, like Lee Harvey Oswald in the window of the Texas Schoolbook Depository. But he wouldn't use a rifle. No, rifles leave evidence. Rifles can be produced in court. Rifles can miss. He pulled back a shroud of burlap and opened the cardboard box he'd stashed up here earlier that day. He reached into it and withdrew the only murder weapon, the only magic bullet a Van Brunt could ever need. The gold lantern flashed in the moonlight. He held it up to the window. 1 if by land, 2 if by sea, he thought. And then it's time for a midnight ride. But it won't be Paul Revere. No, not Paul Revere at all. He found the oyster knife at last. He lay his cupped palm sideways over the vent. Don't get blood on your Armani. And stabbed the blade into his palm. The blood came hot. He dripped it into the lantern, where the skull of the horseman waited to sip it like nectar. The reliquary glowed, and an incantation in Old Dutch appeared, shining from within the metal. It was time. Hedwig bent and whispered into the vents. Rise, headless, and ride. The letters vanished, and a cold white light burst from the thing. The skull wasn't just a skull anymore. It had gestated. Capillaries clung to it the way fine hair clings to the crown of a newborn. A thick, carotid artery moved with snake-like undulation, drinking blood from the pool at the base, pulling it upwards to circulate through scarlet vessels, through twisting coils, slurping the liquid greedily, the way little Zeph used to slurp strawberry Nesquik through a crazy straw. The blood pulsed and pushed into the nose, into the eyes, into the hollow cavity within the skull. But was it hollow still? Hedwig didn't think so. He felt a mind growing there, something with a will to challenge his own. He fixed his gaze to the twin caverns of its eye sockets, speaking slowly and deliberately. Jessica Bridge. The death's head grin broadened somehow, and a thread of black and green liquid, shiny as a horsefly's wings, trickled from the gap of a missing eye tooth. Only Jessica Bridge. Do you understand? He shook the lantern. Do you understand? The face lurched forward and struck the glass, leaving a red splash there. It wobbled and settled, smiling and nodding. Jessica Bridge, hissed the face. Yes. Hedwig raised the lantern a little. Jessica Bridge. The red face tipped backwards and the jaw cracked wide. Hedwig recoiled. Something pink and wet writhed inside that mouth. The nub of a new tongue, salivating as if it could taste the name. Jessica Bridge. Jessica Bridge. Jessica Bridge. Jessica Bridge.